The luminous glow of the Milky Way streaked through the crystal dome of the Biosynthex laboratory, casting ethereal patterns across Nalia's blue-green skin. She worked alone tonight in the sprawling research complex of Aquarius, the floating metropolis of Nibiru, capital planet of the Nova Prime system. Her slender fingers moved with practiced precision over the holographic interface, cataloging the latest batch of xenogene samples. Synthesis stable. Protein markers within acceptable range, she murmured, her large violet eyes reflecting the dancing data streams. As a Xerelian biotech technician, Nalia found comfort in the predictable patterns of genetic research, a stark contrast to the unpredictable nature of interspecies diplomacy that dominated life on Nibiru. At 22 standard years, Nalia was relatively young for her position at the Special Research Institute, but Professor Eldon had recognized her intuitive understanding of xenobiology early. The silver-bearded Xerelian scientist had taken her under his wing after her parents' tragic death in a radiation accident 5 years ago. Now, she channeled their legacy through her work on cross-species therapeutic applications. The laboratory door hissed open, interrupting her thoughts. A tall human male entered, his military posture unmistakable despite the civilian lab coat. Major Xander Ross, Earth Alliance Military Medical Corps, assigned to the Joint Research Facility 6 months ago. His presence always created an invisible tension. Something about his steel-blue eyes made Nalia uncomfortable. "Working late again. Technician Nalia?" His voice carried that peculiar human cadence, clipped and direct. "Final protein sequencing for tomorrow's presentation," she replied, not looking up from her station. "The Xerelian Human Adaptive Immunity Project requires precise documentation." Xander nodded, placing a sealed vial on the adjacent workstation. The liquid inside glowed with an iridescent blue tint. "This needs secure storage in the xenogenic vault. Top clearance only." Without further explanation, he turned and left. Curiosity, Nalia's greatest strength and occasional weakness, immediately pulled her attention to the mysterious vial. The label marked it as VGT-27 sample. Provisional authorization required. No further classification. No hazard warnings. She finished her work an hour later. The laboratory now completely deserted as the Nibiran clear dusk descended over Aquarius. The strange vial still sat on the adjacent station, seemingly forgotten by the hurried human scientist. Nalia approached it cautiously. Through the transparent walls of the container, she could see its unusual luminescence, similar to the nutrient supplements often used in Xerelian metabolic research. Her scientific mind raced with possibilities. Could this be the breakthrough compound the Earth Alliance had hinted at during last month's summit? A xenonutrient formulation that could enhance cross-species compatibility. The responsible action would be to secure it in the vault as instructed. But Nalia's academic curiosity overwhelmed her caution. Just a quick analysis wouldn't hurt. She wouldn't even need to open the container for basic spectroscopy. She placed the vial in the scanner. The results surprised her. The compound contained familiar protein structures commonly used in Xerelian nutritional supplements, along with several unidentified molecular chains. Nothing in the scan indicated toxicity or danger to Xerelian physiology. In fact, it registered as potentially beneficial, like a high-grade nutraceutical. Nalia was thirsty after her long shift, reaching for her water. A moment of conflicted thought crossed her mind. The small amount needed for a proper taste analysis wouldn't be missed. After all, understanding compound palatability was crucial for developing therapeutic applications. With a quick movement that she would soon regret, she transferred 3 drops of the blue liquid into her water. The solution briefly swirled with luminescent patterns before settling into a pale azure hue. "For science," she whispered with a half-smile, raising the glass to her lips. The taste was pleasant, slightly sweet, with a tingling after-effect. She recorded her observations while returning the vial to its original position. Nothing seemed amiss until approximately 6 minutes later, when the first wave hit her. It began as a warm flush spreading from her core outward. Her heartbeat accelerated dramatically, breaths becoming shallow and rapid. The laboratory lights suddenly seemed painfully bright, every sensation magnified tenfold. A rush of dizziness forced her to grip the workstation for support. "Something's wrong," she gasped, fumbling for the emergency communication panel. The laboratory spun around her as an unfamiliar sensation coursed through her body, an overwhelming, primal desire, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her skin became hypersensitive, the slightest touch of her clothing sending shivers down her spine. The door opened again. Lyra, her closest friend and a medical nurse at the institute, entered with concern, evident in her silver eyes. "Nalia, the monitoring system flagged your elevated vitals. Are you—" She stopped mid-sentence, taking in Nalia's flushed appearance and dilated pupils. "I think I've made a terrible mistake," Nalia managed to say before her knees buckled. Lyra caught her, immediately activating her medical communicator. "Emergency Protocol Alpha 7. Possible xenobiotic reaction in laboratory biosynthex. Subject: Technician Nalia. Symptoms include tachycardia, hypersensitivity, and altered consciousness." Nalia clutched at her friend, her voice a desperate whisper. "The vial! I only took a few drops." Alarm flashed across Lyra's face as she spotted the container. Recognition dawned in her eyes. "That's from the Military Research Division. What have you done, Nalia?" Before she could answer, a team of emergency responders burst into the laboratory. Among them was Professor Eldon, his usually composed features twisted with worry and anger. "Quarantine protocols immediately," he ordered, his voice sharp with authority. "Secure that compound." Through her increasingly confused state, Nalia watched as the laboratory transformed into a hive of controlled chaos. Medical scanners hummed around her. Voices spoke in urgent tones, and somewhere in the background, alerts blared through the Institute's communication system. As they transferred her to a hovering medical stretcher, Nalia's gaze fixed on a figure watching through the laboratory's observation window, Xander Ross, his expression unreadable as he observed the unfolding crisis. In her delirious state, an inexplicable urge pulled her toward him, breaking away from the medical team with surprising strength. She stumbled toward the observation window, drawn by an overwhelming instinct she couldn't explain. "You!" she gasped, pressing her palm against the transparent barrier that separated them. "What have you done to me?" The last thing she saw before consciousness faded was the conflict in Xander's eyes, a mixture of scientific curiosity, alarm, and something else she couldn't identify. Then darkness claimed her, pulling her into a swirling vortex of sensation and desire. The news spread through the Institute like wildfire. A Xerillian technician had consumed a classified Earth Alliance military compound. A potential diplomatic crisis was brewing, with accusations of inadequate safety protocols from the Xerillian side and allegations of unauthorized access from Earth representatives. At the center of this storm lay Nalia, unaware of the political tempest her simple act of curiosity had unleashed. The soft hum of medical equipment greeted Nalia as consciousness gradually returned. Her eyes fluttered open to the sterile environment of an isolation room in the Institute's medical wing. The memories of what had happened came rushing back, bringing with them a wave of shame and embarrassment. "How are you feeling?" Lyra's gentle voice came from beside her bed. Her friend looked tired, silver eyes dulled with worry. "Like I've violated every research protocol in existence," Nalia replied weakly. "How long was I—" 12 hours, Lyra answered, checking the biomonitors. "Your system went through quite an ordeal. The compound you ingested, it wasn't a nutritional supplement. Nalia. It was some kind of military performance enhancer." Nalia closed her eyes, the full weight of her mistake crashing down on her. "I've ruined everything, haven't I? My career, The Institute's reputation. Professor Eldon is handling the diplomatic aspects, Lyra said carefully. But there's something else you should know. The compound is still showing activity in your system. They've tried standard detoxification procedures, but some molecular traces are resisting elimination. A cold fear gripped Nalia. What does that mean? It means we don't fully understand what this substance was designed to do, came a male voice from the doorway. Xander Ross entered, followed by Professor Eldon. The contrast between them was striking. The humans' rigid military bearing against the Xerelian scientists' scholarly demeanor. Both, however, shared identical expressions of grave concern. Professor Eldon spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of authority and disappointment. Technician Nalia, your actions have placed this institute in a precarious position. Unauthorized interaction with classified research materials is grounds for immediate termination under our joint charter. I understand, Professor, Nalia replied, forcing herself to meet his dark eyes despite her shame. I accept full responsibility. The situation is more complicated than simple disciplinary action, Xander interjected. The compound you consumed was VGT-27, an experimental military-grade enhancement serum. It was never intended for Xerelian physiology. What exactly does it do? Nalia asked, dreading the answer. Xander and Eldon exchanged uncomfortable glances before the human continued. It was designed to enhance human combat performance by stimulating certain neurological and endocrine responses. It increases strength, speed, and... He hesitated. Aggressive drive. Aggressive drive, Nalia repeated, recalling the overwhelming sensations she'd experienced. The serum targets multiple systems, Xander explained clinically, including those associated with adrenaline production and... He cleared his throat. Libidinal response. Understanding dawned on Nalia with horrifying clarity. The uncontrollable desires, the magnetic pull she'd felt toward Xander. It hadn't been random confusion. The serum had deliberately amplified her most primal instincts. You're developing a combat drug that induces sexual arousal, she asked, incredulously. Her scientific mind immediately grasping the implications. Why would any military want that? The arousal aspect is a side effect, not the primary purpose, Xander defended, though his eyes shifted away from her gaze. The theory is that heightened aggressive and territorial instincts correlate with certain primal drives. The Earth Alliance is exploring multiple avenues to enhance soldier performance in hostile environments. Professor Eldon cut in, his voice tight with barely contained anger. Regardless of its intended purpose, we now face a serious situation. A controlled military compound with unknown long-term effects has been introduced into a Xerelian system. This could have profound diplomatic repercussions. I'll submit to any treatment protocol necessary, Nalia offered desperately. It's not that simple, Lyra said gently. Initial tests show the compound has bonded with your xenogenic protein structures in an unexpected way. Some of its effects may be persistent. The implication hung heavily in the air. You're restricted from laboratory access pending investigation, Professor Eldon declared formally. All your research projects are suspended indefinitely. You will report daily to medical for monitoring and remain within institute grounds until further notice. What about a cure? Nalia asked, looking between the three faces surrounding her bed. If we understand how the serum works, surely we can develop a counteragent. That would require complete disclosure of VGT-27's composition, Xander said stiffly, which falls under Earth Alliance military classification protocols. So I'm just supposed to live with unknown military chemicals altering my physiology? Nalia's voice rose in disbelief. The Earth Alliance is willing to cover all medical expenses and provide compensation for your discomfort, Xander offered, his tone suggesting this was a generous concession. Nalia sat up straighter, anger replacing her earlier shame. I don't want compensation. I want information. I need to understand what's happening to my body. That won't be possible without proper clearance, Xander replied coldly. Professor Eldon placed a restraining hand on Nalia's shoulder. We'll continue this discussion later. For now, you need rest. As they turned to leave, Nalia called out, Major Ross. When he paused and looked back, she met his gaze directly. If you won't share what's in that serum, I'll have to figure it out myself. I am a biotech specialist after all. Something flickered in Xander's expression, concern, perhaps, or grudging respect. Without responding, he followed Professor Eldon from the room. Once they were alone, Lyra leaned closer. You shouldn't antagonize him. The Earth Alliance has significant influence here. They introduced a potentially dangerous compound into our research facility without proper disclosure, Nalia countered. And now they're hiding behind military classification to avoid responsibility. Politics aside, I'm worried about you, Lyra said, squeezing her hand. The medical team is detecting unusual patterns in your neurochemistry. The serum seems to cause periodic spikes in your endocrine system. The episodes of arousal, they'll continue, Nalia asked, mortified. Lyra nodded grimly. For now, and possibly with increasing intensity as your body attempts to process the compound. Nalia stared at the ceiling, determination hardening within her. Then I need to find a solution myself. Lyra, I'll need your help. What are you planning? Something probably against Institute regulations, Nalia admitted. But I can't just wait around while unknown chemicals rewrite my biology. Lyra hesitated only briefly before nodding. Tell me what you need. Over the next week, Nalia's life transformed into a careful balancing act. By day, she submitted to the humiliating daily examinations, enduring the clinical scrutiny of doctors who viewed her more as a diplomatic incident than a patient. By night, with Lyra's help, she began her own investigation. Her first priority was obtaining a sample of her own blood during one of the intense episodes the serum triggered. These incidents were becoming more frequent and difficult to hide, moments when her heart would race, her skin would flush, and overwhelming desires would cloud her mind. During one particularly intense episode, Lyra managed to draw a blood sample. Under the cover of routine medical duties, they analyzed it in a secluded corner of the medical lab during off hours. What they discovered was alarming. The serum had created hybrid protein structures, fusing with Nalia's native biochemistry to create entirely new compounds. These novel molecules appeared to target her endocrine system, specifically glands associated with reproductive and territorial behaviors. This isn't just affecting your hormones, Lyra observed as they examined the results. It's altering your neuroreceptors too. The serum seems to be creating new pathways in your limbic system. Can we synthesize a blocker? Nalia asked, struggling to maintain scientific detachment while discussing her own hijacked biology. Not without knowing more about the original compound, Lyra replied frustratedly. We're missing too many pieces of the puzzle. Nalia stared at the genetic sequences floating in the holographic display. Then we need to get a sample of VGT27, the original, unaltered version. Lyra's silver eyes widened. You're talking about stealing military research material. That's not just against Institute rules. It's a violation of the Earth-Xerelian Treaty. They violated my body with their military experiment, Nalia countered, violet eyes flashing. I'm not looking to weaponize it or sell it. I just need to understand what's happening to me. Her determination was only strengthened the following day when she encountered Xander in the Institute's central atrium. Just being near him triggered an episode, her heart racing, skin flushing, and an inexplicable gravitational pull toward him that took all her willpower to resist. Still experiencing side effects. I see, he commented, scientific interest evident in his voice. Why does it affect me this way around you specifically? She demanded in a hushed tone, conscious of others nearby. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. The serum contains trace elements of the developer's DNA as a stability matrix. As the lead researcher on VGT-27, some of my genetic markers are present in the compound. Horror and understanding dawned simultaneously. You engineered it to create a biological connection to its creator. What possible military application could that serve? It's complicated, he replied evasively. And classified. My body isn't classified, Nalia hissed. I deserve to know what's happening to me. The effects will diminish eventually, he offered, though uncertainty shadowed his assertion. How long is eventually? Weeks? Years? The rest of my life? When he didn't answer, she stepped closer, lowering her voice further. I know the Earth Alliance is developing this as a combat stimulant. But what's the real purpose of the attachment effect? Are you creating chemically bonded soldiers? Breeding programs? Xander's expression hardened. You're venturing into dangerous speculation. Technician Nalia. I suggest you focus on your recovery and leave military matters to those authorized to address them. As he walked away, Nalia felt both the physical pull of the serum and a growing sense of dread. Whatever VGT-27 was designed for went beyond conventional combat enhancement. She needed answers, not just for herself, but potentially for interspecies security. That night, Nalia made her decision. With Lyra's reluctant assistance, she formulated a plan to access the secure laboratory where Earth Alliance military research was conducted. Their opportunity came 3 days later, when a routine system upgrade temporarily disabled certain security protocols. Navigating the lower levels of the Institute during the quiet midnight shift, Nalia felt her heart pounding for reasons unrelated to the serum. What she was doing constituted espionage in the eyes of Earth Alliance law. If caught, she faced not just dismissal, but potentially imprisonment. Using Lyra's medical clearance, they accessed the military wing. The laboratory where Xander conducted his research was locked behind additional security measures. But Nalia had prepared for this. During her legitimate work at the Institute, she'd developed a bypass algorithm for emergency quarantine situations. With trembling fingers, she applied a modified version to the laboratory door. The lock disengaged with a soft click. 10 minutes, Lyra whispered urgently. Then we need to be gone, regardless of what we find. The military laboratory was clinically austere compared to the Xerelian research spaces, while Xerelian labs featured living plant specimens and organic design elements. This space was all metal and glass, harshly lit and rigidly organized. Nalia moved quickly to the specimen storage unit, searching for VGT-27. She found it in a temperature-controlled chamber, several vials of the same iridescent blue liquid she'd consumed. Carefully, she extracted a single sample, securing it in a containment unit. We should go, Lyra urged, keeping watch at the door. Just a moment, Nalia replied, her attention caught by a holographic data terminal. I need to know what this was designed for. She activated the terminal, quickly navigating through files until she found the VGT-27 research documentation. Skimming rapidly, phrases jumped out at her. No. Enhanced territorial response. Chemical bonding to commander. Increased aggression and protective instincts toward bonded individuals. Potential for specialized squad cohesion. The implications were chilling. The Earth Alliance wasn't just developing combat stimulants. They were experimenting with chemical methods to ensure absolute loyalty and obedience. Soldiers dosed with VGT-27 would be biologically compelled to follow their commanders, with enhanced aggression and strength to carry out those orders. Nalia! Lyra's urgent whisper interrupted her reading. Someone's coming! Quickly, Nalia transferred the key files to a secure data chip and closed the terminal. They barely managed to exit the laboratory before footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ducking into an adjacent storage room, They held their breath as a security team passed. Once back in Lyra's quarters, Nalia examined their stolen treasures, one vial of VGT-27, and the research data that explained its true purpose. "This goes beyond military enhancement," she told Lyra, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and outrage. "They're developing chemical control methods, creating soldiers who are biologically compelled to obey." "And you're experiencing these effects because you consumed it?" Lyra asked, horrified. "A modified version of them," Nalia confirmed. "Since I wasn't exposed to the full protocol, and my Xerilian biology is different, the effects manifested primarily as attraction, rather than obedience. But the mechanism is the same." "What do we do with this information?" Lyra asked. "First, we develop a counteragent," Nalia decided firmly. "Now that we understand how it works, we can target the specific protein structures and neutralize them." "And then?" Nalia stared at the glowing vial, considering her next words carefully. "Then, we need to decide whether the Xerilian Council should know what our Earth Alliance partners are really developing in our shared facility." With renewed purpose, they established a makeshift laboratory in Lyra's private quarters, carefully bringing in equipment piece by piece to avoid detection. Using the stolen research data and vial, Nalia began the painstaking process of developing a counteragent. The work was challenging, requiring precise genetic manipulation and protein synthesis. Complicating matters were Nalia's continuing episodes, which became more intense as days passed. During these incidents, she would experience overwhelming physical desire, heightened sensory perception, and an almost magnetic pull toward the military wing of the institute where Xander worked. "The bonding element is strengthening," she observed clinically during one particularly intense episode, while Lyra monitored her vital signs. "It's as if my body is being reprogrammed to seek out the original genetic source." "Can you fight it?" Lyra asked, concerned by the readings on the medical scanner. "For now," Nalia replied, though uncertainty tinged her voice. "But it's getting harder. We need to accelerate our work on the counteragent." A breakthrough came 10 days into their clandestine research. By combining Xerilian immunosuppressive compounds with targeted enzyme inhibitors, they created a prototype serum that might neutralize the VGT-27 in Nalia's system. "The computer models show a 78% chance of success," Nalia said, examining the simulation results. "That's the best we can hope for without actual clinical trials." "It's too dangerous," Lyra protested. "This hasn't been properly tested. The interaction could make things worse." "I don't have a choice," Nalia replied firmly. "The episodes are increasing in frequency and intensity. Eventually, I won't be able to resist them." She didn't voice her deepest fear, that she might seek out Xander and expose their secret investigation in a moment of serum-induced vulnerability. Before they could debate further, the door to Lyra's quarters slid open. Professor Eldon stood in the entrance, flanked by Institute security officers. Behind them stood Xander Ross, his expression grim. "Technician Nalia, Nurse Lyra." Professor Eldon's voice was heavy with disappointment. "You are both in violation of multiple Institute protocols and interspecies treaty agreements." Nalia stepped protectively in front of their makeshift laboratory setup. "Professor, I can explain. Unauthorized access to restricted areas, theft of classified research materials, unsanctioned experimental activities," Eldon continued, each accusation striking like a physical blow. "Do you understand the severity of your actions?" "What I understand," Nalia replied, finding strength in her conviction, "is that the Earth Alliance is developing biological control agents in our supposedly collaborative research facility. Compounds designed to create chemically bonded, obedient soldiers." Xander stepped forward, his face tight with anger. "You've accessed classified military research without authorization. That constitutes espionage under Earth Alliance law. And experimenting on Xerilian citizens without consent violates the Nibiru Accords." Nalia countered. Your serum has altered my neurochemistry without my knowledge or permission. You ingested the compound voluntarily, Xander argued. After it was left unsecured in a shared laboratory with no hazard warnings. Nalia's voice rose with indignation. And now, you hide behind military classification to avoid taking responsibility for the consequences. Professor Eldon raised a hand, silencing them both. This situation has escalated beyond a simple disciplinary matter. Security. Confiscate all research materials and equipment. As the officers moved forward, Lyra suddenly grabbed the prototype counteragent and injected herself. Lyra, no! Nalia cried out in horror. If it works, they'll have to acknowledge we've found a solution, Lyra explained hurriedly, her silver eyes determined. They can't just bury this. But within moments, it became clear something was terribly wrong. Lyra's skin paled to an ashen gray. Her breathing became labored, and she collapsed to the floor, convulsing violently. Medical emergency! Nalia shouted, dropping to her knees beside her friend. She's having a cytokine storm reaction! Xander pushed forward, his military training taking over as he helped Nalia stabilize Lyra. We need to get her to the medical center immediately. The counteragent was calibrated for my physiology after exposure to VGT-27, Nalia explained frantically as they lifted Lyra onto a hovering stretcher. Her system doesn't have the altered proteins to neutralize. It's attacking her native cell structures instead. They rushed Lyra to the Institute's emergency medical facility. All thoughts of security violations and classified information temporarily forgotten in the urgency of saving her life. Nalia worked alongside Xander and the medical team, her intimate knowledge of the counteragent's composition proving crucial to developing an emergency treatment protocol. Her organ systems are failing, one of the Xerilian doctors reported gravely. The modified virus in the counteragent is replicating unchecked. We need to create an antiviral specifically targeted to the mutation, Nalia insisted, looking to Xander. But I need to know exactly what viral vector you used in VGT-27. Without that information, we're working blind. A conflict played across Xander's features. Duty to military secrecy, warring with the immediate crisis before him. Finally, he made his decision. The base virus is a modified retrovirus derived from Proxima Centauri b, indigenous microbiota, he revealed, ignoring the shocked looks from his Earth Alliance colleagues. The modification sequence is housed in my private database. I'll transfer it now. With this crucial information, Nalia and the medical team worked feverishly to synthesize an antiviral treatment. The hours blurred together in a desperate race against time as Lyra's condition continued to deteriorate. Throughout the crisis, the Institute went into lockdown. Rumors spread about a potential biohazard containment breach, and armed Xerilian military units arrived to secure the facility. The political situation deteriorated as accusations flew between Earth Alliance representatives and Xerilian officials. Inside the medical isolation chamber, however, politics meant nothing. There was only the fight to save Lyra's life and the shared determination of scientists from two different worlds working toward a common goal. 18 hours into the crisis, they administered the antiviral treatment. Nalia, exhausted beyond measure, watched anxiously as the medication entered Lyra's system. For several tense minutes, there was no change. Then, gradually, Lyra's vital signs began to stabilize. It's working, Xander confirmed, studying the medical readouts. The viral replication is slowing. Relief flooded through Nalia, so powerful she had to grip the edge of the medical console for support. She'll recover? She's not out of danger yet, the lead doctor cautioned. But yes, I believe she will survive. As the immediate crisis passed, the larger implications of what had transpired began to surface. Professor Eldon, who had been coordinating with Neburon authorities, entered the medical chamber with a grave expression. The Xerilian High Council has been informed of the nature of research being conducted in our facility, he announced. An emergency session of the Nibiru Accord Joint Committee has been called. Xander stiffened. You've exposed classified military research. A biological agent capable of altering sentient behavior was being developed on Xerilian soil. Eldon replied sharply. The political ramifications are significant. It was designed for human physiology only, Xander defended. Yet its effects on Xerilian biology have been demonstrated rather conclusively, Eldon countered, gesturing toward Nalia. As the two argued, Nalia remained by Lyra's bedside, her friend's unconscious form a stark reminder of the real costs of their actions. Whatever political storm was brewing, whatever consequences awaited them all, nothing mattered more than Lyra's recovery. Hours later, as Lyra's condition continued to improve, Nalia found herself alone with Xander in the medical center's observation room. The tension between them had shifted, no longer purely antagonistic, but complicated by their shared experience, saving Lyra. "Why did you help us?" Nalia asked quietly. "You could have maintained protocol, refused to disclose the viral vector information." Xander was silent for a long moment, staring through the observation window at the medical team attending to Lyra. "Because some things matter more than military objectives," he finally answered. "I didn't become a doctor to watch people die when I could prevent it." "Even if it means compromising your mission?" Nalia pressed. "VGT-27 was never meant to be used the way you're imagining," Xander said, turning to face her. "Yes, it creates a bond between soldiers and commanders. But the intent was to enhance unit cohesion and survival rates in extreme combat situations. To ensure no one gets left behind. By chemically compelling obedience," Nalia pointed out. "By strengthening natural protective instincts," Xander countered. "The chemical bonds mimic familial connections, triggering the same neurological pathways that make humans protect their kin." "And the sexual response?" Xander had the grace to look uncomfortable. "An unintended side effect. The pathways that govern protective behaviors overlap with reproductive drives in humans. We were working to eliminate that aspect before field implementation." Nalia studied him, trying to reconcile the cold military scientist she'd first encountered with the man who had risked his career to save Lyra. "I want to believe you're developing this with honorable intentions. But history is filled with examples of military technology being misused. Which is why proper controls and ethical oversight are essential," he acknowledged. "Perhaps this incident will lead to better safeguards." Their conversation was interrupted by Professor Eldon's return. The elderly Xerilian looked exhausted, the events of the past days weighing heavily on his features. "The Joint Committee has reached a preliminary decision," he informed them. "All military enhancement research is to be suspended, pending a comprehensive ethical review. Additionally, a new joint oversight board will be established with equal representation from both species." Xander nodded stiffly, accepting the inevitable. "And what of Technician Nalia and Nurse Lyra? Given the extraordinary circumstances, and considering their actions ultimately exposed a potential treaty violation, punitive measures have been deemed unnecessary," Eldon replied. "However, there will be consequences for the breach of protocol." Nalia braced herself, expecting the worst. "Technician Nalia, once you have been successfully treated for the effects of VGT-27, you will be reassigned to the newly established Bioethics and Humanitarian Research Division. Your experience uniquely qualifies you to ensure such incidents never occur again." Relief and surprise mingled in Nalia's response. "Thank you, Professor." "Don't thank me yet," Eldon said with unexpected gentleness. "There is still the matter of treating your condition. Major Ross has agreed to provide complete documentation on VGT-27, allowing our medical team to develop a proper counteragent." Xander confirmed this with a nod. "The Earth Alliance has authorized full disclosure in your case, given the unusual circumstances." "And the original research?" Nalia asked cautiously. We'll continue under joint supervision, with a strictly humanitarian focus, Eldon answered. If the bonding properties can be separated from the aggressive enhancement components, there may be therapeutic applications for trauma victims and those with attachment disorders. In the days that followed, Nalia underwent treatment with a properly formulated counteragent. Unlike the hasty prototype that had nearly killed Lyra, this version was carefully calibrated to her specific physiological needs. Gradually, the episodes of overwhelming desire and the inexplicable pull toward Xander diminished. Lyra's recovery was slower but steady. As she regained strength, she and Nalia spent hours discussing their future at the Institute and the changes their actions had precipitated in interspecies research protocols. "Do you regret what we did?" Lyra asked one evening, as they watched the crystal rain of Nabira's clear dusk from the medical center's recovery garden. Nalia considered the question carefully. "I regret that you were harmed. I regret the methods we were forced to use." She paused, looking up at the swirling galaxy visible through the dome above. "But I don't regret seeking the truth. Some knowledge is worth the risk." 2 months after the incident, a formal inquiry concluded with the establishment of the Nabira Protocol, a comprehensive framework for ethical research oversight in joint human-Xerilian facilities. Nalia, fully recovered from the effects of VGT-27, played a key role in drafting the biotechnology sections. On the day the protocol was ratified, she encountered Xander in the Institute's central atrium. He was preparing to return to Earth, where he would face a military review board regarding his disclosure of classified information. "Will you be court-martialed?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. "Probably not," he replied, with a hint of his old confidence. "The diplomatic fallout would be counterproductive. More likely, I'll be reassigned to a less sensitive research division. With stricter oversight," Nalia added. "With wiser oversight," he corrected. "Sometimes we need to be reminded why ethical boundaries exist." An awkward silence fell between them. Two scientists from different worlds who had moved from adversaries to reluctant allies through crisis. "I've been authorized to continue collaborative research with the Xerilian medical team," Xander finally said. "Focusing on the therapeutic applications we discussed. If you're interested, your insight would be valuable." Nalia felt a momentary echo of the old pull toward him, but this time, it was purely her own interest, untainted by chemical compulsion. "I'd like that, under the new Nabira Protocol. Of course." "Of course," he agreed with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. As they parted ways, Nalia found Lyra waiting for her near the crystal observation deck that overlooked Aquarius. Her friend had fully recovered, though the experience had left its mark in subtle ways. A new seriousness in her silver eyes, a deeper appreciation for the work they did. "Ready to begin our new project?" Lyra asked, linking her arm through Nalia's. Together, they watched the shimmering expanse of Nabira's capital city below them, and beyond it, the vast starfield that connected their world to Earth and countless others. The challenges of interspecies cooperation remained, but they had taken an important step toward ensuring that science served life rather than control. "Ready," Nalia confirmed, feeling truly herself for the first time in months. Whatever the future held, they would face it with clearer eyes and wiser hearts, a small but significant victory in the complex dance between different worlds and the beings who inhabited them. In the soft glow of the Milky Way, streaming through the crystal dome above, Nalia and Lyra stood side by side, two Xerilian women whose friendship had withstood the ultimate test. Their silhouettes merged into a single shadow against the backdrop of stars, a living symbol of healing and hope in a universe filled with both peril and possibility.